Welcome. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please click the subscribe button. Always appreciative of all the support. At the time of recording this, we're at 250 subscribers and ascending, I hope, on an upward trajectory. Green Bay has released its initial 53-man roster coming out of preseason and training camp. We're not going to waste any time. We'll dive right into some of the thoughts. We're going to hop around. I don't know exactly where you'd want to start. I don't want to go quarterback, running back, wide receiver. I just want to bop around different notes. It'll be controlled chaos. We'll call it that, organized chaos. Green Bay made two notable veteran signings this offseason in the form of wide receiver Mecole Hardman and sort of like you think of a utility player in baseball that can kind of play multiple positions, Isaiah Simmons. And Green Bay tried him out at inside linebacker. Certainly had played safety, slot. Hell, put him on the edge. Was a gunner on special teams for Green Bay. And both those guys were released. So neither of the notable veteran signings in Mecole Hardman, Isaiah Simmons, made the team for Green Bay. And if you remember, on my 53-man roster prediction, I had Malik Heath over Mecole Hardman, which ended up happening. I thought Green Bay would keep 6 wide receivers. Christian Watson starts in the PUP list. That came to fruition. I chose Heath over Hardman for one big reason. Hardman didn't earn a spot, and did Heath necessarily earn a spot? I don't know if he got one, but he didn't do anything to really damage his chances. Whereas when you looked at Mecole Hardman, I brought this up in multiple videos throughout the preseason and throughout training camp. I thought Mecole Hardman's best shot to make the team was as the punt returner, and in his first opportunity, his first showing, his first chance to do so on the stage of the preseason. Week 1 against New York, he muffs one after it bounces a couple of times, and then he backpedals and receives one slightly inside his own 5-yard line and gets mugged and brought down right around there for Green Bay. And so I thought Mecole Hardman hurt his chances, especially week 1 of the preseason, whereas Malik Heath, sure, he had a couple of drops, but more familiarity, comfortability within Matt LaFleur's offense. He's been around longer, and he didn't do anything to really damage his chances, whereas I thought Mecole Hardman did. And so when I looked at it, I said, Mecole Hardman hasn't really done a whole hell of a lot to warrant a spot. And I thought if he made it, which he didn't, and I thought he won it in my 53-man roster prediction, it would be simply because Green Bay would be saying, let's just keep him at punt returner so we don't have to pivot and worry about another hole, another void to try to fill. But Green Bay doesn't keep Mecole Hardman. I was wrong in that. I thought the Packers would be too stubborn to release Isaiah Simmons and that they would try to milk out something, that they'd falsely convince themselves that they could get something out of Isaiah Simmons, and they would secondarily look at the situation and say, well, he can play special teams. He can certainly play special teams for Rich Bisaccia. But they snipped Simmons out of the picture, so I was wrong in that assumption. I had Green Bay keeping 5 inside linebackers. Simmons was out of the picture, and really, if we can just domino effect this. From a numbers perspective, with how the roster broke down, 2 quarterbacks, Jordan Love, Malik Willis, 3 running backs, Emmanuel Wilson, Chris Brooks, Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd does go on IR designated to return. He'll miss the first 4 games. If we look at the numbers game, which is a term I've thrown out a lot throughout the offseason, specifically this summer, I was surprised they only kept 4 inside linebackers, but I do think it tells us something. I think it tells us something quite significant. When it was announced or reported this morning, not by the Packers, but by reporters, that Isaiah Simmons was going to be released, my initial thought was, okay, Quay Walker, Edgerrin Cooper, Tyron Hopper, Isaiah McDuffie, those are your locks. And I thought the number would be 5 at inside linebacker. I was wrong about that. And I said it would be Simmons. When it was announced that Simmons was going to be released, I was like, wow, Christian Welch is going to make it. Green Bay only kept 4 inside linebackers, which really surprised me. Like when I broke down the numbers perspective, it was 6 wide receivers, 4 tight ends, and I only had 3. But my last cut from getting to 54 to 53 was Ben Sims. He ended up making that. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. I was surprised to see it was only 4 inside linebackers. What I think it tells us is that Goody, Matt LaFleur, Jeff Hafley, the rest of the Brain Trust, they really like the depth they have. And I would say they specifically really, really like, and I'm not trying to speak for them, and I'm sure this question will be asked the next time Matt LaFleur is at the podium and the next time Jeff Hafley's at the podium. I've got a suspicion that they really, really are impressed with what they've seen from Tyron Hopper this summer. This dude popped in the preseason, not just in one game, but in multiple games, not just in one spot, but in multiple spots. And I'm talking about throughout the duration of a game, specifically at inside linebacker. When I'm talking about spots, I'm talking about different junctures of those games and in training camp. I have to believe that Green Bay said, we're a little light at inside linebacker in terms of numbers. We're only going to keep 4. But Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper, cross your fingers if they're healthy, they're going to play a majority of the snaps on defense this year. And I know injuries have been a problem for Quay Walker throughout his first few years in the National Football League. Edgerrin Cooper, as he dazzled and impressed more and more last year as a rookie, got more and more put on his plate in terms of snap counts. Just go look at the numbers. Tyron Hopper, to me, is the key in all of this. If Tyron Hopper didn't flash, if Tyron Hopper didn't have the summer he did, I'm going to choose to believe that Green Bay probably looks at that situation and says, let's keep 5. Let's keep Simmons or let's keep Welch. Instead, they're so impressed, and I brought it up in my 53-man roster prediction video. I think Hopper could leapfrog Isaiah McDuffie at some point this season, hell, maybe entering week 1 on this depth chart. And so Green Bay has to trust the depth that they have to keep just 4 inside linebackers, because the part to me that was, I don't want to say shocking or stunning and use those, shock jock value words or phrases. I will say I was surprised that when it was reported this morning that Isaiah Simmons was going to be released, my first thought was, okay, Welch is going to make the roster because certainly they'll keep 5. But they only kept 4 inside linebackers. And to me, it just speaks volumes to what they must trust and believe they have in Tyron Hopper. Because they know what they have in Quay Walker. They want to believe what they have and what we believe they have in Edgerrin Cooper, which is a budding star in this league. And then Isaiah McDuffie's a nice depth piece. But they got to believe they've got something good with Tyron Hopper to just keep 4 inside linebackers, releasing Isaiah Simmons and Christian Welch, which surprised me that they only kept 4, but it does make some sort of sense. Was it? I got to double check this. We're going off the fly. Jacob Monk, I believe, is on IR designated to return. Give me a second here. Yeah, injured reserve designated return Jacob Monk. And despite that, Green Bay kept 9 offensive linemen: Elton Jenkins, Aaron Banks, Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker, Jordan Morgan, Anthony Belton, Sean Ryan, Donovan Jennings made the roster, and then Darian Kinnard, who they just traded from Philadelphia for a late future draft pick. And so they keep 9. Jacob Monk is put on IR designated to return. So whenever he is designated to return, that number would be 10. But then I'm looking at this. It seems like Jenkins good to go, Banks good to go. I'm talking about in terms of roster security. Jenkins and Banks actually, coincidentally, are the 2 guys I'm worried about. Are both going to be ready for week 1? What's that back situation like for Aaron Banks? But in terms of roster, they're safe on the team. Jenkins, Banks, Tom, Walker, Ryan, Morgan, Belton, and you just gave up a draft pick to acquire Kinnard from Philadelphia, so I would assume he's safe. So that's 8. Now, when Monk comes back, that's a spot that's going to him, and someone else has to give one up. Doesn't necessarily mean it's an offensive lineman, but do you need to keep 10 at that point? And that's where I wonder about the safety and security of a roster spot for someone like Donovan Jennings. But they keep 9 and put Monk on the IR designated return. And I was super, super interested. It kind of seemed like everything was aligning, right? Where Marshawn Lloyd's going to be IR designated to return. Who's getting that other spot? And is it Zane Anderson, right? It ended up being, my idea was Baron Sorrell, and I knew it was far-fetched, but I thought with the sprained MCL, probably not going to have consistent reps right from the get-go. Why not give him extra time to just sort of rehab and rest that sprained MCL so he's full go, ready to go in October after 4 weeks? I fully noted in my roster prediction I didn't expect the Packers to do that, and they didn't. But could it have been him? Could it have been Zane Anderson? They end up having Monk on the IR designated to return along with Marshawn Lloyd, but they still keep 9 offensive linemen. By the way, Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please click the subscribe button if you haven't already. The goal by the end of the Packers season is 1,000. I can't get there without you guys just clicking the subscribe button. It costs you nothing, right? Just click the subscribe button. Always appreciative for all the support. I will say, again, in terms of just surprises for me, the 4 inside linebacker, not who they kept, but the number of 4 inside linebackers surprised me. And then They keep 6 corners. I said they'd keep 6 corners. I was wrong on 2 of them. And I'll be quite frank, I'm sure many of you were as well. We knew there were 4 locks, but they were in separate tiers. There's a tier of Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs, and Carrington Valentine. Those are your 3 dudes. We knew Bo Melton was pretty safe as far as making the team, but he's not in that tier. He's never played a defensive snap in the regular season at cornerback. He just hasn't. But you knew he was going to make the team. You felt pretty confident about that. At least most of us did, right? And then after that, it was, do they keep 5? Do they keep 6? Can't imagine they'd keep 4. And if they keep 5 or they keep 6, who are those names? I know Kalen King, primary focus, have him on the slot, in the slot, doesn't offer you much on special teams, right? If anything at all for Rich Bisaccia. And so it can get a bit repetitive when you say, well, we have Keyshawn Nixon, who if need be can play the slot and play it well. We just signed Nate Hobbs, who if need be can play the slot, can play it well. Ideally, Green Bay would like to see Javon Bullard, right, take over that role. And then you have McKinney and Evan Williams as your 2 starting safeties. I just thought Kalen King did everything possible, said all the right things, showed it on tape in the preseason, showed it in training camp multiple times, consistently. This is a guy who had a wrist surgery in the offseason. Instead of going back to wherever he resides and calls home, says, no, I'm going to rehab in Green Bay. I'm going to stick around in Green Bay. I'm going to go pedal to the metal and really empty the tank to try to get a roster spot. Kalen King is an example of how brutal that the business side of the National Football League can be, because I look, and we don't know what's going on, inside the locker room, inside the film room. By every account, though, you just listen to what Matt LaFleur was saying, Jeff Hafley was saying, different position coaches, things of that nature. Wasn't it Derek Ansley, the defensive passing game coordinator, was just raving about Kalen King all offseason and his dedication to his craft and to get better and to get a roster spot. Kalen King is a perfect example of how brutal the business side of the National Football League can be, because I don't know what else he could have done. I don't know what else he could have said throughout this summer to earn a roster spot. He checked damn near every single box and still came up drawing the short straw. And Kalen King left on the outside looking in, does not make the 53-man roster. And so they kept 6 corners. I predicted 6 corners, but I was wrong. I thought Kalen King would be one of those names. And I thought that the veteran presence, the comfortability, the ability to really, you can just toss him in and trust that he'll figure it out on the fly and can figure it out on the fly. Corey Ballantyne also didn't make the roster. I thought there was the luxury of knowing he has versatility to play teams, a guy who in 2023, when Jair Alexander went down, when Eric Stokes went down, Green Bay was looking around, they're like, we're going to have to start a 7th rounder in Carrington Valentine at one of our starting corner spots, and the other guy is going to be Corey Ballantyne, kind of a grizzled vet. He's been around the block a few times. And Ballantyne, I think he ended up started 6 games in 2023, played in 14 or 15, and did so really, really well, provided stability and a solid ground for that cornerback room in what were uncommon circumstances of having to really look around and say, we're down Stokes, we're down Alexander, other guys going down. Like, what are we going to do here? And I thought Ballantyne would make the roster. When Indianapolis waived him in late July and Green Bay quickly scooped him up, I was like, that probably bodes well, and it makes sense. I'll say this. They opt to keep Kamal Haddon and Micah Robinson. Micah Robinson, your 7th-round pick out of Tulane this past April. Micah Robinson, who was dealing with a hamstring injury throughout OTAs, much of the offseason, and missed a lot of valuable time in the offseason, and started training camp on the PUP list, was somewhat quickly brought off the PUP list, and then you start seeing him in action. I thought Green Bay would go the route of keep Ballantyne, keep King, try to get Haddon and Micah Robinson back on your practice squad. If they clear through the process, no one else picks them up. And then you just hope that no one does during the regular season, right? Because if you take someone off the practice squad, you're putting them on your 53-man roster, and then you have a corresponding move in most situations, right? Because most teams aren't carrying 50 or 51 on their roster. It's 53. And so I think someone else is going to probably try to scoop up Kalen King. I thought he was that good. And one thing to note here, and I could be reaching, I don't think I am. So Green Bay keeps 6 corners. And so you're like, okay, that's a healthy number. They keep 6. Keep in mind, Bo Melton, Kamal Hadden, Micah Robinson, that's 50% of the cornerback room that is on this initial 53-man roster, have never played a defensive snap in the National Football League. Kamal Hadden played 6 or 7 snaps, all on special teams last year. Bo Melton was a wide receiver last year. Micah Robinson is a 7th-round pick as a rookie out of Tulane who, again, missed a lot of the offseason. There's some catching up to do there, trying to settle in, adjusting to life in the NFL, but also you missed a lot of time with a hamstring injury. I can't imagine Green Bay would have kept 6, 3 of those having never played a snap at cornerback or defense in the National Football League if they didn't feel good about Nate Hobbs' chances for week 1. And I know this isn't, the initial 53-man roster isn't strictly about Detroit in week 1 and how do things look. I can't convince myself that the Packers thought, man, Nate Hobbs might miss a couple of games. Nate Hobbs might miss week 1, but then we have a quick turnaround week 2 on a Thursday night against Washington. He might miss a couple of games and still decided, let's keep 3 guys who have never played a defensive snap, have never played a snap at cornerback in the NFL. Whereas Corey Ballentine has. Kalen King probably feels a little bit more comfortable with where he's at right now than Micah Robinson, right? Experience-wise, Kalen King spent almost his entire rookie season on the practice squad a year ago, right? But there's more comfortability, familiarity, things of that nature. I have to think Nate Hobbs is going to be good to go week 1 against Detroit. Otherwise, Green Bay would be rolling out with starters Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine, you feel good about. Maybe you put Bullard in the slot, you probably do. But then knowing, like, hey, at some point, do you trust Bo Melton right now to play meaningful snaps in the regular season at quarterback? It's not a knock against Bo Melton. It's looking at his situation. He is transitioning from wide receiver to quarterback in the National Football League. He's not doing it in the NAIA. He's not doing it in Division III. He's not doing it at Division I in the ACC or the SEC. He's doing it in the National Football League. That's not easy. Can't imagine there's a comfortability level right now where the Packers are like, yeah, Bo Melton can go out and play 14 to 18 snaps at corner. No, this is still a work in progress. And so they keep 6. It's a healthy number. But the 3 they keep on the back end, Melton, Kamal Hadden, and Micah Robinson, tells me, and I could be wrong, but it tells me they must feel pretty good about Nate Hobbs' chances to play week 1 against the Lions, or else they probably would have kept one of Ballentine or Kalen King instead of the other 2. And so the number didn't surprise me, 6 corners. The fact that Kalen King didn't make it did really surprise me. And the fact that Ballentine also didn't make it along with King and Hadden and Robinson made it, tip of the cap to them, right? We're not in those meetings. We're not privy to a lot of the things that go on inside that building at 1265 Lombardi Avenue. And you credit Micah Robinson and Kamal Hadden, and you hope that they turn out to be ballers and that they step up and deliver in the opportunities that they get in the coming days, weeks, months throughout the season. And you hope that Micah Robinson can stay healthy and the hamstring injury is a thing of the past. I was surprised that Kalen King did not make it. I just thought he did damn near everything possible that could have been asked of him and still didn't make it. And that's the nasty side of the National Football League when it comes to the business side of things and making these tough decisions. Again, Mitch, I'm on YouTube. It takes 2 seconds. Click the subscribe button. I mentioned Ben Sims made the roster. I'm good with it. I'm fine with it. They keep 4 tight ends, Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, John Fitzpatrick, who clearly won that 3rd spot on the depth chart at tight end, and then they keep Ben Sims, so they have 4 on this initial 53-man roster. I'll wait to say going into the regular season because I'm sure there's going to be other moves that are had. Losing my voice. I had to record a 90-minute podcast for work for a different project right before this, so forgive me. Well, let me take a swig of water here. But Ben Sims makes the roster. And if you remember, or if you didn't watch it, in my 53-man roster prediction, I said, I went with who I think could make it. I went with a mix of who I would have make it and who I think the Packers will have make it on those back sort of last 5-6 spots. And so I had to trim down from 57 to 56 to 55 to 54 to 53. My 54 to 53 came down to Ben Sims. Ben Sims was that guy for me that I was like, and it came down, and we don't know who it came down to for the Packers, and we'll probably never know that information. But for me, it came down to Ben Sims and Nazir Stackhouse. And I thought, man, I think you have a better chance of releasing Ben Sims and getting him back on your practice squad than you do Nazir Stackhouse. I thought someone might end up poaching Nazir Stackhouse quicker than Ben Sims. And I know that's hard to quantify because they play different positions, but I was able to convince myself of it and that it logically made sense. But Ben Sims made the roster. I'm fine with it. I'm happy with that. And Nazir Stackhouse, let's talk about that. They keep 6 defensive tackles, both Georgia guys, Warren Brinson, who was drafted, Nazir Stackhouse, who was an undrafted free agent, make the roster, along with Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden, Devontae Wyatt, and Kenny Clark. I'm super, super happy for Nazir Stackhouse. I think he's a player. I really, really do. I'm not saying he's going to be a star. He's going to be a Pro Bowler. Nazir Stackhouse strikes me as someone who, if he keeps going on the track he's on, that'll be a guy who has maybe a 7 or a 6 to 8 year career in the NFL, gives you some meaningful snaps. Not this year, but down the road could maybe be a spot starter. I just think he's going to keep climbing the depth chart for the Packers. I really, really like Nazir Stackhouse, and you're not risking putting him on the practice squad and having him poached by another team. A couple other notes. Omar Brown on IR. This is how many? I got to look this up. Was it 3 interceptions on Family Night? How many interceptions let's see how good Google is. I think he had 3 interceptions on Family Night and early. Yeah. 3 interceptions during Green Bay's Family Night scrimmage on August 2nd, 2025. And I know it's Family Night. I know it's a scrimmage, but it looked good for Omar Brown, a guy who was trying to scratch out maybe a practice squad spot. Green Bay puts him on IR, not designated to return. Those 2 spots go to Jacob Monk and Marshawn Lloyd. So Omar Brown's season is over. Could reach an injury settlement with Green Bay and then, be on his merry way. But as of right now, Omar Brown on IR, not designated to return. Not officially, for now ending his 2025 season in Green Bay. Again, could reach an injury settlement. I would imagine Green Bay would like to keep him around, right, and see if they can develop him. He had that, was it a lung injury against Indianapolis, and he ended up getting hospitalized, and it was kind of a little bit scary there. But Omar Brown on IR, not designated to return for the Packers, ending his 2025 campaign with Green Bay. 2 other notes I wanted to touch base on. All 8 draft picks stick around. Colin Oliver, John Williams will start on the PUP list, which was expected. Neither have been around, at least on the field, right? They've been around, but not on the field during the offseason, both trying to come back from injuries. And then 11 defensive backs kept, and I will say I cheated on this one. I saw it on the Packers website. 11 DBs kept on the initial 53-man roster is the most since 2020. 6 corners, 5 safeties. I think I spent the shortest amount of time on the safety position when I was predicting the 53-man roster video. And you can go watch it if you haven't, but now we know the 53-man roster, so who gives a rip about what my prediction was, right? But I think I spent like 40 seconds on the safety spot. And the only question was, is Zane Anderson going to be good to go to start the year? Could he be an IR designated return guy? But I said the number is going to be 5. It's going to be Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams, Javon Bullard, Katan Oladapo, and Zane Anderson. And I thought that was cut and dried. And that ended up coming to fruition. The question was, how many corners will it be? I said 6. They kept 6, but I was wrong about the 2 on the back end. Again, thought it was Kalen King, Corey Ballantyne. It ends up being Kamal Haddon and Micah Robinson. But 11 defensive backs kept is the most on the initial 53-man roster since 2020. And I mentioned Omar Brown. Maybe I don't think they would have kept 6 safeties. I think 5 was the number. As good as a summer as he had, I thought he was destined for the practice squad and probably would have safely landed there. But the injury against Indianapolis now has Green Bay putting him on IR and ending his season as he's not designated to return. So those were the things that popped out to me. Malik Heath wins that battle for the 6th wide receiver spot. They don't keep 7. Bo Melton switches to corner, and Mecole Hardman ends up getting released. There were other wide receivers released too, right? Like Julian Hicks, Cornelius Johnson, Will Shepard, and who was the kid that I think went to Nebraska? Big frame, long stride. Isaiah Nair, he was released too. So they keep 6 wide receivers. Malik Heath won that job. They do keep 4 tight ends instead of 3. 9 offensive linemen with Jacob Monk on IR designated to return. 5 defensive ends. We didn't really talk about that too much because I thought it's Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, Kingsley Enagbare, Brenton Cox Jr., Barron Sorrell. Makes sense. PUP list, Colin Oliver, rookie out of Oklahoma State. I'll say this. I'm interested to see, I'll say right out of the gates, I'm interested to see what the snap count totals look like for Brenton Cox Jr. compared to Kingsley Enagbare. Enagbare entering the final year of his rookie deal. Kind of know what you have in him. Brenton Cox Jr. was a healthy scratch the entire first half of last year. Preston Smith gets traded to Pittsburgh. Brenton Cox Jr. now not only on the active roster for the second half of the season, but playing meaningful snaps. Boy, did he ever step up, and boy, did he ever look good for most of this summer. I might be a little bit biased because I'm really high on Brenton Cox Jr. And it might be it might fluctuate on matchup. It could be a week by week case, and Jeff Hafley probably doesn't have that answer cemented in. I am just curious through these let's say the first 4 games, because they have that stupid early week. It's a week 5 bye, I believe, and then you come out of it and you welcome in Cincinnati. Those first 4 games, Detroit at home, Washington at home, on the road against Cleveland, on the road against Dallas. I'm curious to see the snap count totals for Brenton Cox Jr. compared to Kingsley Enagbare. But 5 defensive ends, 6 defensive tackles, 4 inside linebackers. That number surprised me. Not the names who made it. 6 corners, the number doesn't surprise me. Names on the back end did a little bit. 5 safeties, and then obviously the 3 special teamers, Brandon McManus, Daniel Whalen, and Matt Orzech. I think I saw Orzech got was it a 3-year contract extension? Let me look that up real quick. So your long snapper for Green Bay is locked up for the future. 3-year, $4.8 million contract extension. Orzech is now the league's 3rd highest paid long snapper, so Green Bay doesn't have to worry about that position for the long haul. 3-year extension for Orzech. Marshawn Lloyd, Jacob Monk, your 2 guys, IR designated to return. 2 quarterbacks. If you want to talk about the interest there, is it Al Gersma? Is it Sean Clifford that ends up on the practice squad? I'm convinced Green Bay will keep a 3rd quarterback. It will be on the practice squad. Obviously, Jordan Love, Malik Willis make the 53-man roster coming out of this. Could it be someone else? Could another quarterback get released that Green Bay's like, bring him in, right? I think there were some interesting names. If I were Green Bay, I'd go with Al Gersma. I just want to see what he could develop into. It's a good project for Green Bay. I think you've gotten everything out of Sean Clifford you can. It's a guy that couldn't win the backup job when he had every opportunity last year when he was battling with Michael Pratt. Neither of them won it. They bring in Malik Willis, who, head and shoulders above those 2. When it came down to the brass tacks, Malik Willis had to start 2 games, play in a half of 2 others against Jacksonville and Chicago, performed incredibly well for the Packers, looked confident, competent, great throughout the preseason for the most part. Malik Willis is a damn good a backup quarterback, I should say. At some point in time in the not-so-distant future, I think next year, maybe leaves Green Bay to try to compete for a starting job somewhere else. If that point in time comes, that'll suck. But interested to see if it's Al Gersma or Clifford. I would go with Al Gersma. I've stated my case as in previous videos as to why I'd have it be Al Gersma over Clifford. And for those who have brought up, someone had commented on a video in the past, and I get it. They said, well, if Green Bay's in an emergency situation, I would trust Sean Clifford and his knowledge and grasp of the offense in an emergency over Al Gersma. That's true. However, if you're down to Sean Clifford or a 3rd quarterback for any extended period of time in the National Football League, I think I said 99.9% of the time you're screwed anyways. So that's why I'd rather see what do you have in Al Gersma, because you already know what you have in Sean Clifford, and it to this point hasn't even been good enough to be a backup quarterback after he nor Michael Pratt could win that gig last offseason. We'll see what Green Bay ends up doing, though. That's the 53-man roster initially coming out of things. Let me know what you guys and gals think. Please leave a comment, like the video, click the subscribe button above all. Always appreciative of all the support. We'll see you next time.